Hello everybody, Jedi Warlock here, and welcome back to another episode of WoW Rocks, where I examine the geology of some of the most iconic zones in classic WoW. Today, we're taking a look at Un'Goro Crater, a unique jungle paradise located in southern Kalimdor. I'm going to be covering the area's general geography and digging deeper into a few specific locations to put together a complete picture of this zone's interesting geology. As always, thank you for your comments and support, and let's get right into it. The first experience of many players entering Un'Goro for the first time is trekking in from the nearby desert of Tanaris. For such a massive zone, there are surprisingly few points of interest on the map, with much of the space devoted to simply emphasizing the sheer size of the region along with the lack of civilization. The sprawling marshlands extend throughout much of the eastern crater, providing a haven for carnivorous raptors. Moving clockwise, one might encounter the Slithering Scar, a Silithid hive slowly growing underneath the fertile ground. Much like the hives in Feralas and Tanaris, this infestation hints at the larger conflict that will emerge in Silithus. Terror Run is a deadly locale for the solo adventurer. Plated reptiles stalk amongst the stone formations here. Not far away, the Golakka Hot Springs are a rather tranquil destination, highlighting the hydrothermal components of this zone. The remainder of this zone is taken up by two main locations, the first being the Lakari Tar Pits. Many animals have fallen victim to these sticky pools, and the half-submerged bones confirm the story. We'll come back to these pits later, as there is some interesting geology at work here. Last but not least, the towering Fire Plume Ridge dominates the central crater, offering a solid, if scalding, vantage point from which to view the rest of the zone. This is also the ideal centerpiece for our discussion of the geologic, and specifically volcanic, history of this zone. Lava spills out of searing pools near the pinnacle of the formation, and the ground nearby conducts nearly unbearable heat. Fire elementals call this area home, including the infamous Blaze Runner, an incarnation of aggressive fire. The only respite adventurers may find here is Marshall's Refuge, a group of explorers who have established a camp on the northern slopes of the crater. Seasoned adventurers may also be familiar with the nearby observatory that was added in Wrath of the Lich King, confirming this was once a testing ground for life on Azeroth maintained by the Titans and their keepers. Now, let's dive into the geologic formations themselves. If you've seen any other episodes of WoW Rocks, the Golakka Hot Springs should immediately be reminding you of one concept: geothermal heating. Hot springs exist because of hot spots, or places underground that are warmer than usual and consist of molten rock closer to the surface. These hot spots warm up their surroundings, and in cases where underground reservoirs exist, water is superheated and can bubble to the surface, creating hot springs and geysers. You might notice a couple of geysers around the edges of the hot springs, giving us another clue that there are in fact plumbing systems below Un'Goro being heated by tectonic activity. The Lakari Tar Pits are a similar story, except with oil instead of water. When this oil is heated and pushed to the surface, the lighter components evaporate and leave behind sticky pools of tar, which are actually natural deposits of asphalt. Now we know where the goblins get all the stuff for their roads. Fire Plume Ridge is the key to this entire zone, at least at the surface. See, the official wikis list this area as a volcano, and while that may be true at a basic level, there is a lot more to unpack here. Zooming out or even pressing M and checking the map reveals that, indeed, the entire zone is a large circular crater. When I was a kid, I honestly thought this was from a big asteroid impact, but with all the hydrothermal activity going on, I think there is a volcanic explanation for this geography. The current Fire Plume Ridge isn't near powerful enough to create something like Un'Goro, which begs the question, how did we get here? I think some real-life examples can be useful. Yellowstone National Park is mostly situated in a large, shallow crater now obscured by trees, and Oregon's Crater Lake provides an even more striking example. Both of these locations, while we can refer to them as craters, more accurately represent volcanic calderas. A caldera is formed after a massive volcanic explosion, when the Earth actually collapses down into the now empty magma chamber. Looking at Un'Goro with this new knowledge, I think it becomes clear that this zone is a massive caldera itself. One small detail that I think could easily be overlooked is the Ironstone Plateau, located on the eastern side of the crater. You can see this area pretty well when flying in from Tanaris, and I think it could be the site of a landslide long ago caused by the collapse. This feature can be seen all over real-life calderas, and is simply an effect of the infilling process. Let's head back to Fire Plume Ridge. Can we still call this formation, relatively small in comparison to a caldera, a volcano? Well, sort of. After analyzing this zone, I think this area is something more akin to either a lava dome or a cinder cone. For those familiar with Mount St. Helens in Washington State, despite the original volcanic cone having erupted decades ago, there is now a small mound of lava and ash rising up from the center of the crater. This is reflected almost perfectly within Un'Goro. On a similar note, cinder cones are small piles of volcanic rubble situated around a lava source, which again we can see at the top of Fire Plume Ridge. This lava has to arrive at the surface through a complex network of underground lava tubes, and this superheated material is likely what is driving the other thermal features in this area, like the hot springs and the tar pits. So, there you have it, my best scientific explanation for why Un'Goro Crater behaves like it does. Lastly, I'd like to discuss how the crater went from an erupted volcanic site to one of the most lush zones in the entire game. Over thousands of Warcraft years, I believe the fertile volcanic soil would be a great place for life to flourish. And maybe this was the reason the Titans decided to claim Un'Goro in the first place. One might even consider the original eruption having dispersed ash into neighboring zones like Feralus, Uldum, and Tanaris, which have all had very lush jungle environments at some point in time. All of this reminds me of another Titan-influenced, crater-like zone that we've talked about before on the channel, Sholazar Basin. Now, I made an unofficial geology video on that zone a while back, which you can watch by clicking the link here, so I won't get too detailed today. However, I just want to remind you all of the parallels here. Another jungle zone that is geologically active and is set in a crater-like location. I'd love to hear your speculations on what is underneath this other crater, and maybe in the future, I'll elaborate on this topic. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you learned a little bit about the geologic history of Un'Goro Caldera, or crater, excuse me, in this episode of WoW Rocks. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment down below with your thoughts, subscribe if you're new to join the Jedi Order, and until next time, may the Force be with you.